Welcome to the Tea with Tamara Podcast. I'm Tamara Arnold, and it wasn't that long ago that I was a broke single mom, drinking way too much, completely detached from everything. Now I've written multiple books, downloaded I Could Read Chakras, and I'm a channel for the universe. I'm a real person with real stories, and I can't wait to share them with you. So grab a warm bevy, and let's have some enlightened conversation to live our best life. I am so excited right now, you guys, that you are here, and I am recording my first podcast episode for Tea with Tamara, Enlightened Conversation to Live Your Best Life. And I really thought hard about how I wanted this podcast to start and what was the premise or the idea that was behind it. And I really want to begin the podcast and this journey with you with my awakening story, because I feel like, not a lot of people talk about the physical expansion and what their visceral feelings were when they went through their awakening. And B, I think it's a really important message that we start having. So to give a little backstory about how I got to that point in the first place. So we've got to get the pre-awakening story before we get to the awakening story. I grew up, and I know that there are other people who are going to listen to this and will completely relate to what I'm saying. But I grew up around mental illness. And so when I was really young, I took it upon myself, and it was something I took on. As you know, our kids, if you have kids, anything that we're doing or saying is affecting them separate from what we believe is affecting them. And so part of my personal story to get to my awakening was that I felt this responsibility to take care of the ones that I loved who were suffering. And when I was little, I just wanted to make everybody happy. And so I remember giving up this gift that I knew I had when I was really young, because I was always into fantasy novels. I believed I was a princess. I thought that Prince Charming was going to come. I was considered an old soul by my mom's friends because I didn't like kids. I didn't understand what they were doing. Why were they being so mean? I wanted to make everybody feel better. Even adults told me their problems. I was a little empath, and I just wanted to make everything better. And I remember at 10 thinking, this isn't about me. This is about helping my mom at the time. And I kind of shut down my spiritual gift at that time. And this is my favorite part of the story. And this is now looking back where my ability to become codependent really got nurtured. And so I felt responsible for my mom and tried to make her better even when she didn't want to be better. And this was, again, me taking that pressure onto myself. Now, after, so long, you're like, okay, this is exhausting. I can't make everybody better. And so I moved out of my house and my mom's house. And by the time we were living with my grandmother at the age of 16, I want to say 16. And I went to live with my sister. And then I was like, you know what? I'm totally done. I'm just done. And I ran away to Brazil for a year on a Rotary exchange. And when I came back, I was 18, and I fell head over heels for this gentleman who would be the perfect narcissist in the empath story. And I got pregnant at the age of 19. And, the story was that I wasn't trying, and, my family was like, yes, you were. And kind of I was. But I still had waited a really long time. I ovulated late, and so I, didn't practice safe sex, but I wasn't trying to get pregnant, but my heart wanted to get pregnant because what I wanted was pure love. And this led to a child with mental illness and me devoting more years of codependent love until my son was 16 and we had an altercation. because things that were starting to get toxic, and I asked him to seek medical attention or he couldn't stay home. And at this point, I was remarried and had another daughter from a different relationship. And my new partner had 2 kids. So we had 3 other kids at home. And now my son is 16 and and this will be a whole other podcast episode. I just want to get to the awakening. And so I still tried to save my son until he was 17. And then there comes a point, and I was in therapy my whole life, and my therapist had said, Tamara, he's going to keep doing this until, you stop the cycle. And so I got to this place of realizing that I had to say, if this wasn't my son, what was okay and what wasn't. Like if I wasn't attached emotionally, what was okay and what wasn't. And I decided that it was toxic. And when he was 17, we stopped talking. And I tell this story in this sped up version because it really doesn't matter how we get to the awakening, because we're all going to have a shit story to tell. But we get to a place of knowing that everything had to happen the way it did so that we could get to the place where the transition occurs, or that we wake up and realize that there is something greater at force than what we physically see in front of us. And so after Ethan and I stopped talking, I went into a deep depression, obviously, because what mother would do this to their child? And, you have these visions of other parents coming to your front door with pitchforks and stabbing you and saying, you are the worst human in the land. So I spent a lot of time curled up in the fetal position in a chair, barely making it through my days. And I was doing very little work, and I was working from home, and I could peel myself off, get into the studio because I was personal training people, and get back. And I was like, okay, what do I do here? Like, I don't want to stay in this discomfort. And I mean, I was hiding it really well. And so if you're one of those people who are going through the darkness right now, I honor you because it's not easy. And we just want to hide it even more. Asking for help or asking for people to witness it and see it is the last thing that we want. And so I started from within myself, and I started to simply say, what can I do today to feel just a little bit better? And I would receive these thoughts and I would just do them. I didn't overthink them. And looking back now, I understand that this was part of how I awakened. Because when we actually take action on that first thought, we're connecting to something bigger than us. Because we're not allowing our egos or our brains to talk us out of it. And so I would receive simple things like, go get your hair done. And so I'd be like, fine. And I'd make a hair appointment. And maybe I'd say, what can I do today to feel a little bit better? And I would hear, go see your therapist. And I was like, yup, that's a clear yes. And I would make the appointment and I would go see my therapist. Maybe I would hear, go for a walk. And I would get my shoes on and I would go for a walk. But I was actively participating in trying to feel just a little bit better than I did the day before. And I remember having had that conversation with myself and not really hearing anything and opening up my laptop and scrolling and getting to a place where I don't know why I just was drawn to this ad that was 30 days meditation with the angels. And it was by a woman named Carrie Samuels. And I was, confused for one of 2 reasons. One, at this point, I believed I was not spiritual in any way. I had kind of cut myself off from God and the church and spirituality for the most part. I still believed in goddess and mother nature, but I wasn't into understanding that there are 2 energies in place. So I was like, why am I being guided to angels? What's that about? And the other thing is I had never meditated before. And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Why would I do this? But again, I was actively listening and I was open to receiving what the next thing to do was. And so because my awareness went to it, I was like, all right, fine. I will give this 30 days meditation with the angels a shot. And so I signed up, and the first one came into the mailbox, and I said, okay, let's go. I don't know what I'm doing. And you turn it on, and you're like, do I sit? Do I lie down? Do I sit cross-legged? Like, what is this meditation thing? So I was like, screw this. I'm lying down on the couch because that's what feels good to me. And she said a few things, and I fell asleep. Slept through the entire meditation. And when she said, come back into your body, I did. And I was like, what just happened? Did I just completely black out during that meditation? So I thought the next day I would give it another shot. And lo and behold, I slept through the second day of 30 days meditation with the angels, and the third and the fourth. And to tell you the truth, I slept through all 30 days meditation with the angels. But the most important thing to know is that I didn't stop. I didn't stop because somehow I knew that it was what I needed. And I never questioned that I was doing it wrong so much as I believed that my conscious brain was not ready to do the work at the level that my subconscious could do. And so I was falling asleep so that I could do the deeper work that was the deeper seated stuff that I had to go through before I could consciously begin to do it. And so after the 30 days had gone by, I have to tell you, I was feeling better. Like, I didn't know what was happening while I was falling asleep, but I could tell you that my energy was shifting every single day. And so I definitely was not done with the meditation train when these 30 days were over. And I was like, yeah, I'm ready for this. And as I started to open up into more and more meditations, I realized that my perception of spirituality was changing as well. Because all of this time, I had completely shunned the idea of God and angels and only believed in Goddess and Mother Earth. And as I was kind of now starting to like receive some strange messaging in my meditation, and I was like, is this real? My grandfather came to visit me in meditation. I started to have very vivid clarity over certain things I would hear. Instead of just kind of listening to my own voice, I would hear a guidance of something to do. And I woke up one day and I was like, oh my goodness. I truly know in the very essence of who I am that the messaging that I'm receiving in my meditations is real. Like, there's some channeling going on here that is beyond me. And so I decided to do something about that. I started to actively pursue utilizing this gift that I had received in my meditations. And I took Doreen Virtue's angel card reading certification, and I started practicing energy work on others. And it blew my mind, the fact that I was able to have like clear thoughts, feelings, and emotions that come through and sometimes sense while I was doing these readings with people. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is something going on. Now, as all of this incredibly powerful channeling and, energy was coming into my body, I just want to take a moment and talk to you about the physical responses that were happening. Because you're already going through the psychological, which is like, am I crazy? I can't talk to people about this. They're going to think I'm crazy. Everything could be considered unreal. Like, I don't know, I was not spiritual like a month and a half, 2 months ago. Now I'm going through all of these transitions. I need to be thinking about that. So you're going through all that turmoil, but the physical responses start to happen as well, which is, and this is the way that I explain it for myself because it made sense, is I would get a brain cramp when my awakening was happening. And I can only describe it as having been a personal trainer for 9 years. Like, if you work any muscle of your body and you haven't worked it in a while, you get muscle soreness, right? Your bicep hurts if you do biceps, your legs hurt if you do legs. Well, I can only explain the brain cramp that I was getting because it wasn't a headache, as I was activating or utilizing parts of my brain that hadn't been used in, at that point, 37 years of my life. And so it would be like a pressure in my head. And I was like, oh, this is new. And then came the heightened senses. And by heightened senses, I mean, I could walk out and be like, oh my goodness, I just walked into a Technicolor Dreamcolor world. Like, the leaves on the trees aren't green, they're really green. The blue of the sky isn't just blue, it's really blue. And it was almost like bombarding my vision on how bright everything had come, which I'm sure didn't actually help the aching of my brain anymore. Right? Because like everything was in Technicolor. Everything was so bright. It was so magical. And then you could hear better. Like I could hear the leaves as if they were speaking to me. I could hear water when it was further away. It was like my sense of hearing got really magnified for a while. And then my favorite was the vertigo. Well, that's slight sarcasm. It was not my favorite, but at the same time, I wasn't worried about it. I knew that, and it only happened in wisps of time. It wasn't like a consistent vertigo. It was more like when I was outside going for a walk and I was absorbing the sights and the smells and the experience. And I was like, whoa, this is so much more than it used to be. And yeah, okay, I don't know what to do with this processing information. And all of a sudden it would feel like the world beneath me was like a moving ship. And I would go like, great, so that's just an added bonus to whatever else is happening right now. But again, what I didn't do is question any of this. I just knew it was part of the process of becoming this expanded version of myself. And so I continued with the quest of learning more about my energy reading and how to step more fully into these realizations and these gifts and these expressions that were coming. And it was like, if you imagine turning the stereo all the way up, that's what it felt like. And I would go places and I would get overwhelmed with energy. If I went to the grocery store, I'd have to come in and lay down because I didn't understand that at this time I was in control of my own gift. It felt very, very uncontrolled. And I know that there will be people that are listening to this who will fully be in that state where it's almost exhausting to put any energy into learning your spiritual gift because you're like, I can't go out of the house right now because I feel like things are so overwhelming that it's just better if I don't go anywhere until I figure this out. And so I started to reach out to a bunch of people and I was receiving all sorts of things. And I'm going to go through a couple of these because I really hope that they may help you. So like there was the idea of putting myself into the bubble so that I could stay in a safe container and not allow outside negative forces to affect my internal energetic state. And then somebody else was like, oh, they were a Reiki person. And they're like, well, wash your hands and it removes all of the energy. And so I would try that. And then in another group I was in, somebody said that a tube, they would just drop a tube from the sky. Obviously, it is in your mindset, your thought process, and it comes down and it just kind of cuts any cords and attachments to you that aren't serving you. And then it goes up and then you can feel a little bit more vibrationally high. And I tried all of these things, but they weren't quite the right thing for me. And the most important thing I want to tell you here is part of the awakening story is there comes a point, and this is the best piece of advice I can give you, is knowing, as with anything in our lives, there is no external force that solves the problem. The answer is actually within ourselves, and it's the knowledge that we are in charge of it, and it is not in charge of us. And so when I kind of simply asked, what do I need to do to not exhaust myself when I leave the house? Because I was getting kind of almost in a depressed state over the effect of something so beautiful on me. And I didn't want that. I wanted this to be a beautiful expression of what Spirit had given me. And when I asked that question, they gave me a visual of the volume receiver on like the old receivers back in the day, stereo systems. Now that record players are back in like coolness again, you'll see more receivers. And I realized that I could dial up my spiritual gift of energy reading in channeling, and I could dial it down. And then what happened is when I started to be able to read people independently away from other people in a larger group, if you go into a sound booth and you see the screens with all the little dials on it, it was like I could pick up a frequency of one human and dial them up and keep everybody else's dial down low. So I wouldn't get mixed energies coming in. So if I was going out for coffee with somebody and I wanted to vibrationally be in a higher receiving state of their energy, I could increase them and leave everybody else in a low state. But what was really important, and this came also through the process, was learning that we never want to shut it off. Because I did that. I did that with sight. When I had actually seen something for the first time, I got absolutely frightened and I screamed, "I'm not ready!" And I completely shut it off. And you can feel this moment of like dead silence, air in your body, and you're like, oh, what did I just do? I just turned something off inside me. And it's been a real interesting journey to get it back. And it's just starting now, and this was about 2 years ago, to really start to activate in a way that is beautiful. And they're giving me small things because I think they realized it was like all in a little too fast. And we're just working our way up slowly right now. So yeah, that was basically how I've gotten to this space of last February. Really getting into the channeling. So once I started working with my energy even more, I started to receive messages that sounded like my own voice, but as if somebody was behind me. And they would say things like, I created a color to create your most amazing year, because I had always believed that I didn't follow through and finish projects. And so I received this message to make this coloring agenda, and I did it. And then I received a message to do an intention card deck, a card deck where words were powerful and had meaning. And so I did that. And then I was guided to reach out to a programmer and write a book. And so I listened and I did that. And so as I was receiving what now I understand is the spiritual guidance, what I was learning was that if I took action on what I was receiving, I would get more. And that led to last February downloading that I could read chakras. And I actually want to stop the podcast here for today, because that is a whole other story about what really stepping into your spiritual gift or listening to spirit and the influence that can have on your life. But this is what it felt like to go from a space of being shut off from the universe and receiving and being in a state of considerable darkness to what it felt like to reactivate myself and to step into the process of, awakening and becoming a spiritual person. And I'm starting the podcast with this because these are the conversations that I want to have, is the conversation of alignment and tapping into the universe and being at our highest vibrational state. And I'm so excited that you are here on the first episode listening with me. If you feel excited about learning more and being in this process, and I've got people coming in to have conversations, please like this podcast, share it, leave a comment. If you have a spiritual awakening story you want to share, I want to hear it. The more that we can like and share and get this podcast out there, the higher it will get in iTunes and more people will be able to see it. So your help is so greatly appreciated right now. And I cannot wait to have more tea and coffee with you every Thursday.